onto the people project type of stuff. Fallacy number 10. This system is finished. So, before we get into the whole elements of maintenance costs, I want to talk briefly about the life cycle of the canonical IT project. It usually starts off as some simple idea in a business person's head. Wouldn't it be cool if? Or couldn't we solve that? And usually they come to a developer and say, can you build me a quick little prototype? And you get them to sign in blood to say that this is just a prototype, does not have to scale, and all of those caveats. And they're like, yeah, whatever. And that's sort of this beginning phase of the project. When you don't even realize you're in the middle of a project, but you're kind of there. Then it goes live. That's when this happens, right? This is not the original date that you're thinking about. The first going live is when you don't even realize there's a project. Then it goes live, people are starting to use it, and that's when you start to get, oh, but then you totally have to do this, and you have to add that, and we can't leave this bit out. And all of a sudden you get this sort of ballooning requirements. Like, wait a minute, is this even a project? Am I even allowed to work on this? And you go to your boss, and he goes to their boss, and eventually the politics get sorted out, and you realize, congratulations, you're in the middle of a project. You start getting more people, the costs start to go up, and eventually at some point in time, somebody makes a promise to somebody else, usually without your awareness, of when the thing is going to be ready. Eventually it works its way back to you. You're like, wait, what? I never said that all of that would be done by this date. Well, it's too late now. We've committed to the CEO, to a major important customer, that it will be done. You have to do it. And if you won't do it, we'll find somebody else who will. That's when things start going bad, because you're looking at that original date and you're like, there's no way we're going to hit that. The business is saying, but you're practically done, right? Like, well, practically done on the code that was never meant to scale to that data volume, to that number of users. I have to rewrite everything now. Is any of this sounding familiar? Yes. Okay. So eventually you fly by the original date and then another data set. And sometimes there are several milestones along the way that they're promised and re-promised and estimated and re-estimated. Eventually, at some point in time, after Herculean effort, somebody at the business level says, we've pulled off the project and it was a success. And you're looking at the horrific code base that you've created. And you're saying, oh my God. Now, if you're a consultant, this is the point in time that you get to say, so long. All the rest of you suckers are left holding the bag. I'm off working somewhere else, right? But this is when the actual work starts, right? It's at this point in time when you recognize, oh my God, what have I done? Again, right? Because you knew, you've already gone through this once. You knew, you swore you'd never let it happen again, and it did, right? So this is the point in time where, quote unquote, the system's in maintenance, right? The system's finished as far as the business was concerned. But when you look at the actual work that happens at that point when the V1 of the thing was delivered, it's not that it's actually in maintenance mode. There's still bugs that need to be fixed. There's still refactorings and re-architectures and scalability problems to solve, and new features that the business still wants. So it's not like the project is actually done, even though as far as management and business is concerned, it's done. But now it's in maintenance mode as far as they're concerned. And then you have, I'm sorry, the KPMGs and all of them that are coming in, the analysts say, the maintenance costs over the lifetime of these systems are, just killing organizations. Organizations are spending often 4 times as much or 10 times as much of the original development of the software in order to maintain the software. And that's going to harm their ability to innovate in the future. And there's lots of doomsday sayers around the cost of maintaining these systems. And the thing is, it's only finished in name only. But from an actual software perspective, it's not really done. Because when you think about maintenance of these types of projects, you're fixing bugs here, and you're fixing bugs here as well, right? On which side of the finished line is it more expensive, more difficult? Where does it require more skill to fix bugs? In maintenance or in original development? Maintenance, right? How about adding new features? Does it require more skill or less skill to add features when there's a big existing code base or a small, barely existing and not yet in production code base?
Big code base.
Big code base, right? And we can go on and on. How about deploying new versions, right? Is it easier to deploy a new version from all of the deployment elements when you already have existing users and data that you can't just purge the database and start up again? Deployment's much harder on this side as well, right? In essence, when we look at maintenance, we see that it requires a great deal more skill to do all of the software stuff over here as it is over here. So explain to me, why is it that when it comes time to do a software project the right way, what we do is say, let's take all of the most senior, most skilled, most knowledgeable people in the company, and we put them on this side, right? They'll design the system the right way so that it will be so maintainable that it could be maintained by less skilled, more junior people in the organization. Why do we say that? Even though there's overwhelming evidence and just common sense that says that this side is the actually more complex, more difficult side of things. Why do we do that?
Well, you don't want to make it bad by putting all the junior guys on the left side either, because
right.
They don't have.
They have no pattern to follow. They don't know how
right.
they should do it.
So in other words, we can't do the inverse either, right? Put all the junior people to design the system, and then put all the senior people over here, which means there's a false dichotomy. There's something here that just, it's not an either or. But I have an answer for why do we put the senior people over here? Because A, we're the senior people, we decide.
It's more fun.
And B, it's more fun. That's exactly the point. It's more fun to build something from scratch than to have to go in and maintain somebody else's crappy code base. When it's your crappy code base, well, it feels like home, right? It's kind of, it has all of the garbage, but you know where all of your garbage is, right? Because you put it there. So it's fine. It's, you know, when it's yours, it's okay. But we got to be honest with each other. The whole idea of I'm going to design it in such a way that it will be maintainable by somebody else has never really worked, not on a large scale. Small, tiny examples might have happened, but at a large-scale industry-wide level, the whole idea of maintainability such that somebody else is going to come in and just sort of figure things out when they're far less skilled than you are, never really worked. So what happens when you throw a whole bunch of junior, less skilled developers on a code base that they don't really understand for a long period of time?
It gets worse.
It gets worse, right? Not like it was in such a great position to begin with, right? Because we were half into the project before we even realized it was a project. Eventually it gets bad enough that somebody like you gets brought in and you look at this mess and what do you say? Rewrite. It would be faster to write this whole thing from scratch than to build this feature on top of the existing code base. Who said that before? Now, question to you. From a purely Spock analytical, rational perspective, is that true? Would it actually have been faster to rewrite everything? It took 5 years to create this mess. Would it actually take less time to rewrite the whole thing from scratch than to implement that one feature that they asked for? And the answer is hardly ever. But the thing is, we know that, and we kind of trust that management is not going to let us rewrite it. It's how we vent. right? We're human, we're allowed to vent. But every once in a while, there's a new CIO, CTO that's brought in, and they're looking to make their mark. Yeah.
I really agree with you that a complete rewrite is often a bad choice. It would be better to sort of segment off pieces of it and rebuild sort of piece each of the monolith or something like that. But sometimes, as you say, it wouldn't be rational with that one feature, but realizing that you will have lots of new features and realizing that the database is just completely horrible with things that won't scale, and it hasn't actually scaled at the moment even. And yeah,
So
you have to have it on the table at least times when it's really horrible.
I don't want to say that that rewrites aren't a useful tool for negotiation and conversation with business stakeholders, but the concern is, let's call it the overall IT project mentality of us falling into projects without preparation and then allowing a lot of organizational forces of, you have to get this done by the end of the year, that results in developers doing all sorts of design decisions that we know are going to hurt the long-term viability of the code base. So there's this type of endemic short-term thinking that is what causes a lot of the problems. And it also afflicts the rewrite. If and when we actually get to do the rewrite, is there's still that problem of, well, when is the project going to be done? And I'd like to submit that there's really, I wouldn't say no such thing, but almost no such thing as software that is finished. Really, software is only finished when all of the code has been purged from all source control repositories. All of the data has been migrated everywhere else. And the people that worked on it forgot about it. That's when you know that the system is truly finished. But up until that point, software is meant to continue to evolve. And our idea of the concept of maintenance, in my view, is a faulty metaphor. It's taken from the construction industry, where first there's a construction phase where we build the software, and then that requires a certain set of skills and knowledge to do that. And then afterwards, it moves into a maintenance mode that requires a different set, usually lower skills and knowledge. So once a year to paint the walls and to deal with the carpeting and things like that. Maintaining a building is a very different act than constructing a building. But unfortunately, that's the metaphor that's been brought forward, even though in software, maintaining software and building software are fundamentally the same activities of writing new features, fixing bugs, making it scale, communicating with team members. All of those human and people and process activities are largely the same, whether we're in the original building it phase or in the expanding its use phase. Because the thing is about software is that we don't have the same physical limitations that when the business comes to us says, yeah, we like the software that you've built. Can you just ratchet it up 2 floors because we'd like to put a swimming pool in the bottom? Nobody would say that in a physical building. It's recognized that you can't make those types of architectural changes in the physical world. We get asked to do that all the time, right? So because of that, I'd like to submit there's no such thing as software maintenance. If there's no such thing as software maintenance, there's no such thing as a maintenance programmer. That means that there's no such thing as a system actually being done, which means we need a whole new set of metaphors in order to talk about software, to rationalize and budget software in organizations. And what I'd like to submit is a slightly different word from project, and we're going to call it product, right? Similar, yet different. What's the difference when dealing with a product? Now, for us as consumers, we might not really understand the difference to a great degree. But for hopefully business people, they internalize that when a company decides to go down the path of creating a product, that they understand that this is going to be a long-term initiative. Think of the iPhone, for example. when Steve Jobs came up with the idea of the iPhone, the idea was not, we're going to make an iPhone so perfect that after the first release, it's just going to be in maintenance mode. There'll be an iPhone 1.1 and a 1.2, and we'll be fixing bugs and little things, but fundamentally it'll be the same. Not really. Or if you're talking about a car manufacturer when they're launching a new car, saying, look, we're going to be in this for like 20 years. This is a commitment. This is a meaningful line of business for us. And we need to look at the long-term viability of this thing. That's what it means to launch a product. It's not a project that, while the launch itself might be a project, the product itself is something that they understand is meant to live almost forever under ideal conditions. That's software. And that means that in some cases we need to accept that the original complexity and effort that goes into it needs to be higher. We need to be more explicit about designing for long-term viability. I don't want to use the term maintainability, I want to use the term viability. To say that that the effort or cost per unit time will be sustainable over the long term. We don't ever want to get into this position where it is so expensive to continue to do anything on it that we have to write the whole thing off and start from scratch. That's expensive, it's time consuming, we can lose the market, and same thing in software. Try to adopt more of a product mentality. Now, that means, again, there isn't this element of, so we're going to put the junior programmers over here and the senior programmers over there. In essence, it's saying we need to have a team that is able to work together for the long term, even if there's some replacement of people on the team, that the knowledge and skills of how this thing works is retained by the team over the long term. And there's an understanding of quick and dirty is not what we're looking for here. Now, the reality is that you're not going to end up with a product until you've gone through at least one project. All right? You need to get to this point that someone says, this is so painful, we need to do something different. Organizations only change their behavior, or human beings only change their behavior as a result of pain. All right? So you're not going to shortcut this process. It's going to happen at least once. The question is, will it happen again and again and again until somebody says, this is crazy, let's do something different. Right? So what does it mean to actually apply software product mentality? We're going to get to that in just a minute. So some things, just to underline what I said before, no such thing as a maintenance programmer. No such thing as software maintenance. Projects, not a great model for software development. We want long-lived products. And the rewrites are going to become problematic. So how do we change things? I'm going to start talking about a development or a business IT interaction process that might not look agile to you on the face of it, but will probably help solve a lot of the forces that caused these types of colossal failures from happening.